The apartment smelled like vanilla and cedar, a mixture of the candles he had lit and the faint traces of her favorite perfume lingering in the air. Soft golden fairy lights were strung across the living room, casting delicate shadows on the walls, flickering like tiny stars. She had spent the morning arranging flowers in small vases, white lilies, pale pink roses, and a single red tulip in the center of the table, a small nod to their first anniversary together. Today was their 10th anniversary, 10 years of laughter, love, small fights, whispered apologies, and countless memories stitched into the fabric of their lives. She had woken early, excitement fluttering in her chest like 1,000 butterflies. She knew he loved surprises, but tonight it was her turn to bask in the anticipation. She peeked into the kitchen and found him at the counter, humming softly, his sleeves rolled up. He was carefully mixing a drink, eyes focused, lips moving in silent concentration. Something about the way he moved, the gentle tilt of his head, the precision of his hands, made her heart tighten in a way that was equal parts nostalgia and desire. "Whatcha making?" she asked, stepping closer. Her heels clicked softly against the hardwood floor. He smiled, that infuriatingly charming smile that could melt her defenses. "For us," he said simply, setting the glass down. "Something special for our special day." Her pulse quickened. She watched him pour the liquid, amber and shimmering, into a crystal glass. He added a twist of orange peel, then a few drops of something fragrant she didn't recognize. The aroma teased her senses, filling her with warmth. It wasn't just a drink. It was a promise, a gesture, a testament to their life together. She took a step closer, inhaling the scent, imagining the quiet clink of their glasses later, the soft brush of his fingers against hers, the laughter and stories they would share. For a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. The hum of the city, the distant sirens, the late-night conversations drifting from the neighbors, all of it vanished into irrelevance. "You've been planning this all day, haven't you?" she teased lightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I've been planning it all year," he replied, eyes glinting with something she thought was mischief. "I wanted tonight to be perfect." Her chest swelled with affection. "It already is," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft hum of the refrigerator. There was a pause, a moment when everything seemed suspended in golden light. A bubble of intimacy that made her forget the world outside. She could almost hear the echo of their younger selves, the ones who had met in that crowded cafe, nervous and awkward, hands brushing for the first time. The years had passed, but tonight it felt as if no time had touched them at all. He handed her the drink, and she took it with both hands, the cool glass warming against her palms. The first sip was sweet, a little sharp, and intoxicating, not just because of the liquor, but because of the anticipation, because of him. Her eyes met his, sparkling with laughter and love, and she felt the thrill of being adored, of being the center of someone's universe. A soft breeze drifted through the open balcony door, carrying the scent of rain-soaked streets. She stepped outside, drink in hand, letting the city lights wash over her. Everything felt cinematic, surreal, and perfect. The moment was hers, theirs timeless, untouchable. And yet, as she leaned against the railing, savoring the warmth of the drink and the cool night air, she thought she caught a shadow of hesitation in his smile. She shook it off, telling herself it was nothing. Tonight was about love. Tonight was about them. Nothing could touch that. Not even the whisper of a secret waiting to be uncovered. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint hum of the city below. She cradled the glass in her hands, savoring the warmth seeping through her fingers. The amber liquid reflected the city lights, making it sparkle as though it contained its own constellation. For a few blissful moments, she let herself drift in that feeling, the thrill of being seen, cherished, loved. Her heart lifted with a soft laugh. the kind that comes from deep contentment. She leaned against the balcony railing, letting the breeze lift strands of hair across her face, brushing her cheeks like a tender caress. The world felt impossibly beautiful, and she felt impossibly safe. Then she heard it, not at first, not fully. Just a low murmur, a voice too familiar to ignore. She froze, the glass hovering midair. The sound drifted from the kitchen door ajar behind her, carried by the soft hum of the apartment. She has no idea, the voice said. Her heart stuttered. She blinked against the lights, straining to listen. Perfect timing tonight, the voice continued. She thinks everything's perfect. She'll never suspect a thing. The world seemed to tilt, the night air suddenly sharp against her skin. She recognized the tone, the careless arrogance. It was his. Her chest tightened painfully, the glass in her hand trembling slightly. Her mind scrambled, refusing to accept what she was hearing. No, this can't be real. But the words sank in like icy water, cold and undeniable. Someone else, plans, secrets. She felt the edges of her world crack, the safety she had felt moments ago disintegrating. Just make sure the drinks are ready when she comes back, he said next. We'll handle the rest after she leaves the balcony. Her hands gripped the glass tighter, nails pressing into the cool surface. She could barely breathe, the betrayal like a jagged knife twisting inside her chest. All the little doubts she had buried, the fleeting moments when something felt off, the tiny lies she had brushed aside. They weren't lies at all. They had been warnings, whispered quietly through the years. The realization came in waves, shock, disbelief, then an electric surge of anger. Not just anger at him, but at herself for trusting so completely, for letting herself fall so deeply, so entirely. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to step back from the railing, away from the open air that had just seemed like freedom. She needed to see him, to confront the truth, but part of her also wanted to run. Run from the ache in her chest, the bitter taste of deceit, the way the city lights suddenly seemed harsh and cold. And then she noticed him, standing in the kitchen, oblivious to her presence on the balcony, speaking in that calm, smooth voice, as though the world could be neatly divided into him and everyone else. Her stomach churned with a mix of revulsion and disbelief. For a long moment, she simply watched, frozen. The city hummed around her, but it no longer felt like a haven. The warmth she had felt earlier, the glow of love and trust, was gone, replaced by a hollow ache and a storm of thoughts she couldn't control. Her mind, however, began to shift from shock to something else, something sharper, something fierce. A quiet, simmering fire of resolve. He might have thought she was unsuspecting, thought he could play this game while she stood there, blissfully ignorant. But he had underestimated her. She could hear, she could see, she could feel, and now she knew. As she took one last trembling sip from the glass, her lips pressing against it with a mixture of sorrow and defiance, she made a decision. This wasn't the end, it was a beginning. She would not crumble, she would not beg, and when the time came, he would see just how wrong he had been. For now, though, she simply stood on the balcony, watching the city lights blur through tears, letting the betrayal sink in fully. The night had shifted, and so had she. The storm was coming, and she would be ready. The apartment felt impossibly quiet once she stepped inside, the soft hum of the city fading into the background. The drink she had left on the balcony now sat abandoned on the railing, half finished, a silent witness to the storm that had just crashed over her. Her chest was tight, her hands trembling, but as she moved to the living room, she realized the trembling wasn't just fear or sorrow. It was something sharper. It was fire. She sank onto the couch, wrapping her arms around herself, and let the tears come. Not the sobbing, desperate kind, but slow, hot tears that carried away years of trust, of hope, of belief in a man she had loved with all her heart. For 10 years, she had shared everything: Laughs, dreams, quiet nights, hurried mornings. And now it felt like someone had torn a gaping hole through her life, leaving her raw and exposed. Yet, as the initial wave of heartbreak ebbed, clarity began to seep in. Her mind, once clouded by disbelief, started to sharpen. She remembered the small things she had ignored. The unexplained phone calls he always answered in another room, the vague explanations, the fleeting glances at her that never quite met her eyes. She had brushed them off because she wanted to believe in him, because love had made her blind. But now, blindness was impossible. She pressed her palms to her face, letting herself breathe deeply. She could feel the anger simmering beneath her grief, a slow, controlled burn that promised not destruction, but justice. She would not be a victim. She would not crumble into the shadows of someone else's betrayal. Her mind began to turn over possibilities, scenarios, subtle, clever moves that would allow her to regain control. This wouldn't be loud or reckless. It would be precise, poetic, and unavoidable. He had underestimated her completely. That mistake, she realized, would be his undoing. She thought of the people around them, those who had only seen the cheerful, loving couple. The friends who had always assumed everything was perfect. She imagined the shock on their faces when the truth came to light, when they realized she had been far more aware, and far more capable than he had ever guessed. The thought made her lips curve in a bitter, private smile. She walked to the kitchen, running her fingers along the counter, thinking through every detail. Timing, evidence, words, each tiny element could be leveraged. Each careless phrase he had ever spoken could be turned against him, not cruelly, but elegantly. She wanted him to understand exactly what he had lost, not just the relationship, but the respect, the trust, the admiration that she had once given freely. The drink he had made for her, the one she had held on the balcony with so much anticipation, now felt symbolic. A reminder that appearances were often deceiving, that sweetness could hide poison. She wouldn't let it break her. She would let it fuel her. Every memory of laughter that had now been tainted by betrayal would become a tool, a quiet weapon of truth. Hours passed, the city lights outside shifting from bright to muted as the night deepened. She sat cross-legged on the couch, her mind sharpening like a blade. Anger, sorrow, and disappointment merged into focus. She would confront him eventually, but not blindly, not without purpose. She would expose him, and in doing so, reclaim herself. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. She was no longer the woman who had stood on the balcony, shaking with disbelief. She was a storm contained, patient and unstoppable. The fire inside her wasn't about revenge for its own sake. It was about justice, about reclaiming the life that had been quietly undermined. By the time she finally rose, the tears had dried, replaced by a quiet determination. The first steps of her plan were already forming in her mind, intricate and precise. He would soon learn that betrayal wasn't weakness, and she was no one's victim. Tonight, she thought, she might feel broken, but tomorrow she would feel unstoppable. The storm had begun, and she was at its center, ready to shape it in her image. The morning light spilled into the apartment like a spotlight, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. She moved with quiet purpose, each step measured, deliberate, the weight of the night before still heavy, but now tempered by resolve. Today wasn't about tears or disbelief. It was about clarity, precision, and the satisfaction of taking back what had been stolen from her. He was still asleep when she began. The soft rise and fall of his chest reminded her, bitterly, of the intimacy they had shared, of the trust she had placed in him. But now that trust had been shattered, and she was no longer willing to let him hide behind her love or his own arrogance. Today he would see her strength. Today he would feel the consequences of betrayal not through anger alone, but through truth. She prepared herself like a conductor before an orchestra, each detail intentional. She didn't need dramatics, she needed precision. Every word she would speak, every gesture she would make, would be calculated to leave an impact, one that would linger far longer than a fleeting argument or a bitter accusation. By the time he stirred, she was ready. She didn't rush to confront him. She let him wake, let him go through the motions of the day, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering in silence. And then she made her move. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice calm, steady. He looked up, blinking, expecting the cheerful, loving partner he had taken for granted for so long. But the eyes that met his were different, cool, focused, and unyielding. "Morning," he replied cautiously, sensing the shift. "I think it's time we talked," she said, tilting her head, letting the words hang like a knife in the air. He swallowed, suddenly aware that the balance of power had shifted, that this wasn't going to be the same easy morning he had imagined. She led him to the living room, where she had arranged a few subtle yet telling clues. A carefully saved screenshot, a casually placed message, a receipt from the night she had pieced together. Each one was a fragment of the truth he had tried to hide, a quiet, undeniable proof that she had known. He opened his mouth, but she held up a hand. "No, I want you to hear me first." Her voice was steady, measured, every word deliberate. "I knew, not yesterday, not last night, for weeks. I listened, I watched, I waited, and now I think it's time you understand what that feels like. Being left in the dark, being betrayed by someone you trust completely." The color drained from his face, panic, guilt, disbelief, all mingled as he realized he had underestimated her entirely. The arrogance he had carried, the belief that she would never see, now crumbled before her calm certainty. "I loved you," she continued, each word precise, cutting through the tension, "and I still loved the person I thought you were. But you made your choice. Now it's my turn." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "You wanted to play games. I don't play games. I act, and this is your consequence." She handed him the glass, the one he had prepared for her on their anniversary, the amber liquid gleaming deceptively in the sunlight. "Drink," she said softly, but it wasn't poison nor cruelty. It was a symbolic gesture, a reminder of the trust he had poisoned and the power she now held. He didn't drink, he could barely speak, staring at her with a mixture of fear and disbelief. And she realized with a quiet, fierce satisfaction that her revenge wasn't just about exposing him. It was about reclaiming herself, her dignity, and her life. By the time he slumped into the couch, speechless and exposed, she stepped back. The storm had passed. She had directed it, harnessed it, and emerged unbroken. Outside, the city hummed with life, oblivious to the quiet revolution that had taken place within these walls. She moved to the balcony, the same one where betrayal had first struck, and inhaled deeply. The breeze kissed her cheeks, carrying away the remnants of heartbreak, leaving only strength, clarity, and freedom. The past was shattered, the love she had known was gone, but the future, her future, was hers entirely, and she would never let anyone take that away again.